I agree. I think that there are a lot of issues with that post, including the very personal ones of whether there's something going on psychologically or mentally. But beyond that, I think you raise good points. It's not only, you know, do you have an obligation or do we have an obligation, having seen that she may have intended or may have violated Rule 4.2 with some initial contact, that's now compounded with, you know, is she violating just some other rules about pretrial publicity or public statements about other matters, including, potentially confidential sources of those things. So it's important to understand it's not only about Thena's obligations, it's about ours, what obligations, we have um, when we come into this knowledge. Um, you don't have to report everything that's a technical violation. It has to go to whether the conduct suggests that there's, a substantial issue of this person's ability to conform their conduct to the ethics rules. But I think Ayana's 100% right. You just don't know enough yet about these facts. And so, at a minimum, I think you want to be on some level of kind of inquiry of what comes next. And Ayana said, um, one of the first things she'd do would be to reach out to this person, and I think that's a great segue actually into our third scenario, which Ayana is going to present. So, Ayana, let me just add a couple of things because I think that you both make really good points. And this is something that I'm acutely aware of and sensitive to, um, because I'm, as I said earlier, the managing partner, managing director of the law firm. So in addition to working cases and, you know, advising clients, I also have to act as an employer. And so, this is just not me telling other people how to run their business, which external counsel love to do, right? This is me trying to successfully be part of running our own business, and sensitivity to these things and noticing them early. If you had noticed them early, if I had noticed them, and maybe had some conversations, maybe on an anonymous basis where I didn't identify the person, but just said to human resources, hey, I'm worried about a particular person. Give me some advice as to how to deal with this or what I should be looking toward. The ability to communicate frankly with Thena. Those are very important aspects of what you need to do here, because if you had done it right, and done it early with that level of you know I don't want to blow it up by saying intervention, but sensitivity, maybe that post never happens. Maybe she never has the blow up with co-defendants counsel, because you've helped her alleviate her stress in different ways, in a more positive way. So I think early sensitivity, just from an employment perspective, is interesting and something you need to do. And Kathleen brings up a great point. Um, when you, as a supervisor, manager, or employer, are also an attorney, um, those things are not just good management practice, that's good ethics, because of what the rules say. And I'll turn it back over to Kathleen or Ayana, but it really is developing, in a sense, to bring those considerations into the ethics rules, as you can see on the screen. It's a very important question, and certainly I've helped clients and counseled clients on dealing with the overstretched high performer. And as you've noted, I also do it in my role here, and we see it all the time. I mean, particularly in a law firm, I may have a specialist who does healthcare fraud and abuse, but she also may be the chairperson of our diversity and professional development committee. And, the demands of her, doing an government investigation may take time away from, what she wants to do on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And they're just different roles, and you have to help people manage their time and manage their understanding. I mean, I think the notion, RPC 5.1, that there are responsibilities of a partner or supervising lawyer are important to understand. I'd go back to something Kathleen said. Um, I think it's important not to think of these issues simply hierarchically. So, yes, there are specific duties that a quote manager or supervisor has, but particularly in law firms and particularly in legal departments um, for corporate clients, um, they're usually pretty flat, right? It's a much more collegial atmosphere. There's not a lot of hierarchy. Um, and all the lawyers have these responsibilities. So just because I'm not supervising Kathleen or Kathleen's not supervising me, if I notice Kathleen acting like Thina, I'm going to want to talk to somebody, right? So it's not only that concept of kind of vertical responsibility, but we have great horizontal responsibility. We got to take care of our co-equals and our team, and that's really part of the, I think, important concept here of what we want to do, um, and really, teach in addition to individual excellence, teach that sense of team and teamwork. I think that's vitally important and actually creates a broader safety net that both prevents ethical violations, but also importantly, um, keeps people performing at the highest level. I mean, that's really what a lot of these team sport issues and team psychology issues are about. There's a notion not only of individual wellness, but of optimum performance, and that's really what some of these things I think are getting to. Look, I think that's right. And to extend the sports analogy, um, if Naomi Osaka had spoken about a sprained ankle or something else that was keeping her from performing at her optimum, no one would have given it a second thought. And I think what we've seen, and the ABA has been part of, and others, is this notion that mental and psychological health is still about health. And we have to get to the point where we're comfortable addressing those issues. I would love it if my law firm performance was really about what was happening with my ankles, but it's not. It's what's happening up here in my head. And the reality is, um, we have to make sure that our people are you know, operating at the highest level. And if that means, um, psychological wellness, mental ability and things that will strengthen that and replenish that, that has to be a part of something that we do. You mentioned some of the ABA statements. The ABA actually has out a pledge that I'm happy to say the board at Epstein, Becker and Green is, committed to sign on. And in fact, we're recording this and today sending out our announcement of formally adopting that pledge. It's a 7-step program. Um, we've actually been doing in one form or another all 7 steps, but to understand and know that there's a coordinated effort to do it and it's shared by our colleagues in the market, we thought that's an important public statement to make. And just by coincidence, we're making it today, as we tape. Um, Ayana, from the in-house counsel perspective, you asked me questions about dual roles. I'm going to flip that back, to you. I know you've had dual roles in your career. I know, certainly people in corporations, have multiple roles. I've always seen multiple roles as a way of enhancing performance and opportunity, but talk to how we balance that ability for people to showcase their talents with the pressures of performing a job. I think that's incredibly well said and obviously hits on multiple points that are shown up on the screen as to what companies can do. But I love the notion that you highlight that in a lot of ways this comes to a point of introspection and individuality, and the notion that we need to understand ourselves as individuals and succeed or fail as individuals, while still maintaining that balance of the team. I think that's important. one thing that we've sort of talked around a little bit, and I'll ask Kathleen to comment on. Um, we've talked a lot about COVID. We've talked a lot about remote work, and we've glanced on some other issues. But you know, there also is a connection between some of the things we've seen in terms of racial and ethnic issues and the sense of stress and pressure and other things. And Kathleen, I just ask you in terms of those issues. How do you see that playing into the notion of understanding mental health, understanding psychological well-being, and the unique pressures that some of us feel in in living in this time? Well, I appreciate those comments, and just want to sort of bring us toward conclusion. Um, all of the things we've talked about really can help employers in any field, but the role of legal employers is one that's particularly sensitive, whether we're talking about in law firms or within in-house counsel groups. And I think so much of what Judy Martinez said and what we have highlighted on the screen here has been reflected in I think the really perceptive and terrific comments we've gotten from Ayana and Kathleen. And that's where I would want to conclude for the day. But also note that there may be questions. So Kathleen, what do we want to tell people who still have questions about this? Because you know, as much as we would like to, we didn't solve everything in the last hour. So what do we do with our questions?